Welcome, friends. Welcome back to the Manish Tiwari show. Friends, we live in a time where social media possibly has overtaken who we know, how we know them, and people we celebrate are often people who are visible to us on the social platforms. But I take pride in finding people, in getting to know people who truly are the essence of our times, who actually are people who represent our society in a much more meaningful and deeper way. And today, friends, we have one such person, uh, someone who hails from a family which is extremely well known in in Bengal in India, but also in the literary circles all over the world. He's Dr. Nabakumar Basu, who's also a doctor, lives in the United Kingdom. He's the son of a celebrated writer, Dr. Samresh. I'm sorry, I'm saying doctor, but I'm sure he's doctor in the literary sense. Samresh Basu, who is extremely well known. He is a prolific writer. And it's my good fortune to have Dr. Nabakumar Basu with us today in the studio, talking to us about his work, his life, and also about his father. Dr. Basu, welcome to my show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Manish.
And it's such an honor to have you here. The more I was reading and researching about your father and yourself, I realized then, and this is the reason I said in the beginning that in today's time, we often are inundated with people and images which don't matter that much, but we are losing touch with people like yourself, with truly, with people who are true literary giants. And this is my feeling even when I travel to India, when I go to the bookstores, very often the books and the kind of stuff which is being sold today is a little bit, I would say, superficial. And even growing up in India, one of my biggest laments has been that we've lost touch. We very often end up reading the world writers, but we have lost touch with our own, with people who actually matter to contemporary India, who actually are a mirror to our society. So, Dr. Basu, on that note, I'll start my interview. I'd like to welcome you again to my show, and I'd like to ask you first a little bit about your father, who is very well celebrated and respected in Bengali literary circles, but as I said earlier, all across the world. I'd like to ask you, how does it feel, how does it feel to be born in such a family, in the shadow of such a father? What was your upbringing like?
To say about the upbringing, I have to really say a lot of things. I don't think that we really have opportunity for that. But just before starting, let me tell you two things that you might feel a little bit disturbed sometimes when I'm just having a bout of cough sometime,
No problem, sir.
which just had started since yesterday evening. And the second thing is this: I didn't know that this interview will be in English. I thought that possibly it will be in my mother tongue. It will be in Bengali. So I could have done some mental preparation about that. But however, it doesn't matter. Let me just try to express myself according to my own way.
Thank you.
The thing is this: whenever I just appear for any sort of interview or whatever may it be, obviously, being the son of such a big literary person who is not only famous in Bengal but also in India as well, that I had to face that instead of talking about myself to start with, I have to talk about my father, which obviously I enjoy as well. That doesn't mean that I feel myself inferior to that, but this sometimes it could be a problem, but sometimes this is part of my enjoyment as well. Just to cut a long story short, that we started our life in a very primitive sort of things, because my father took a lot of challenges in his early life of literature. He, including my mother, both of them were actually comrades, and they were at that time the members of the undivided Communist Party, and that was in the last century, in the 40th decades. So, involving with the communist ideology and everything, my father had to go to the jail as the Communist Party was declared illegal at that time. But when he came back from the jail, it was his experience that he possibly didn't get the proper support which a human being gets, because it's not the political sort of belief or ideas, but it is life which is much more important. The life must go on. First is life and then is politics. So gradually his interest to the party started going away, and he thought that how am I going to survive? Because for going to the jail, and as he was arrested, he lost his little job of the central government, and he was very early married, and we were four brothers and sisters, two brothers, two sisters, and my mother. So it's a family of 6 members. And for these 6 members, there was no earning, there was nothing. Actually, our address was on the streets. I still don't understand that how we really survived, but definitely we survived because the values were there, and possibly it is because of my mother, the whole thing actually were just kept in proper place. So my father then decided that he cannot do anything else other than writing, painting picture, singing, and all these. But out of that, because he didn't have any educational qualification or anything, because he just completed and he actually walked out from the school at the class of 8th standard. Since then, he didn't go to any other school or any other institutional training or education, etc. So all along throughout his life, he was a self-educated person, and he decided then that he will only practice literature. But only practicing literature doesn't help anybody to survive biologically, physically. So it was my mother who stood behind him and then decided that if you think that doing anything else is simply a wastage of your life, I cannot accept my husband as a person like that. So you do it, and let us see how I can survive with this family. So it was actually a long journey in a very difficult and high tide river with a broken boat. And that's how it started. Slowly and slowly, he started writing, and he started getting recognized after one or two things, some short stories, some novels. But actually, it opened when he got in touch with the Andubazar Putrika for his journey to the Kumbh Mela, which was in the early years of 1950. So that's in short how it started.
No, thank you so much. I mean, you were born in 1949, from whatever I could read, and that gives us a huge canvas. You've lived through India's most turbulent decades, and also you've seen, I believe, the history of Britain in the last 60 odd years, or at least you have an idea of that. So we have a huge canvas, and obviously, I would like to know a lot of things, but we would not have that much time. So I will focus on a few basics first. Dr. Basu, you were born in 1949, and I believe you were 71, but you look remarkably young. So I must say,
Do I?
you definitely are a good doctor, if that means, if your image as a doctor definitely gets boosted with this. So how did this journey start for you? You were born in India, and I completely understand that in those days, your father, in spite of becoming a literary giant in later years, obviously had a very humble beginning in terms of money, and obviously India itself, has gone through those phases, and I'm sure it must have been a humble beginning. So, when did you start thinking of becoming a doctor? Was that a choice like for most people? Like I just came back from a marriage in outside London, and half the people who were Indians there were doctors. So, that's the common joke we have that Indians in this country, in UK, they become either doctors or accountants because we just had so much pressure in India to become something which financially could be translated into a
Sorry.
successful life or career. So, what was behind your becoming a doctor? Because you had.
Actually, considering our family status, initially it would not been possible to dream about being a doctor in India at that time. But when my father literary career started, actually he proceeded very fast. And as soon as two, three of his works came out with tremendous popularity and everything, like Amrita Kumbh Sandhane and Ganga, and connection with Anandabazar Putrika, which I always mention, that they actually understood and knew this person as a giant of literature and has tremendous possibilities in near future. So slowly the financial condition started building up little bit, and there was a stage in mid 50s when we possibly can eat both in the AM and PM. That was the situation at that time. However, in, in spite of having a lot of poverty, the values, the cultural values, the social and the educational way, we really, I think it was a very enriched, sort of definitely rich childhood. And poverty didn't matter ultimately. So, what happened that we were in one of the places in North 24 Parganas. At that time, it was undivided by 24 Parganas. But ultimately, in North 24 Parganas, in a very wretched condition house, which was actually deserted and previously lived by the Muslim people, they went away. They were my father's friend as well. They said that, well, if you want to come here and stay, whatever money you can give, you can take that. So my mother decided that even after just having some money, asking from somebody, she tried to buy that one, and that's how it started. And along with our education and etc. And whenever I tell about these things, I always mention my uh, grandfather's name. Grandfather means my mother's father, my dadu. I always mention about him because he was an extremely educated uh, person with a lot of principles and values. And we used to be taught, and our childhood actually spent with him. And out of all brothers and sisters, in my case, my literary quality, I don't know, although I don't believe that it has got a genetic connection or anything like that. But actually, it started showing the signs really. Because my first story, of course, you understand at the age of 6 how the story could be, but it was published in one of the newspaper Sunday magazines at that time, and the name of that putrika, the newspaper, was Shadinata Putrika, and in that Shadinata Putrika, my story was published when I was only 6 years old. However, at the same time, I was good in studies and everything, sort of. So gradually, after the when I started going to the higher classes in the school, in our family at that time, you see, even if you have some other talent, the family members cannot take the chance of sending them according to their choice. but everybody thought that people should go in a particular branch or particular line where they can just get some job or can earn money sort of things, which in Bengali the typical term is called something, so that they can kore khete pare, which means that some job so that from they can earn some money and can survive in life. So um, although I was good in studies and I didn't find any difficulty in getting chance in the medical school, but my literary thing, I still believe that if something goes into somebody's head, it really doesn't go. So I never stopped writing, to be very frank. In the school, there was school magazine, there was wall magazines. When I came to the college, actually the span gradually started increasing. So in Calcutta, we started with the little mags, and that way it started. But the thing is this, literature and medicine in our country cannot go together because we had to take a lot of responsibilities. My first story in that sense was published in the year 1977 in the popular most Desh Potrika at that time, where actually I went hiding my father's name. Because at that time there was similarity with my face with my father's face. Anywhere we go, I used to be identified as the famous man's son.
Son, yeah.
At that time, of course, you understand that it was in mid 60s and late 60s when my father was already a very noted name in the literary world. So I went to the Desh Putrika and the Baya Putrika office without knowing, without saying anybody, just with a small short story, and went to see the Desh editor Shagurmaya Ghosh, and didn't say anybody. And at that time, I was only a junior house staff in the hospital. um, Somehow that story he liked because he was a stalwart in the editorial world. He possibly thought that maybe that this boy will continue to write. However, it was going on in such a way that I never thought that this literature could be my profession, as my father decided and he took it like that. So I was a doctor at that time, but at the same time, side by side, literary practice was going on. But I used to feel sometime that actually I'm just going, keeping my 2 feet in two boats, as it is in Bengali we call "duno koi pa." That was sort of thing I used to feel at one stage. Anyhow, literary practice or literary publishing stories and novels will definitely not give me that much of financial support so that I can support my family. I also just got married a bit early, my classmate, but thank God that my wife Raki, she is a doctor as well, but she gave me a lot of support. So that's how I really survived as well at that time. But at the same time, I got into the postgraduate school. I qualified as a surgeon by that time, but literature was always in my head, although I was a known surgeon by that time. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Um, and then, although I was a surgeon, I started writing. I was writing side by side, and that's why I call myself as a bi-professional man. But at one stage, I felt that in India, and more specifically, I should say that it was starting from mid and late 80s, I felt that the values, what we really got right from our childhood, the way we are brought up, it's not going with my principle and with my life. So we are gradually thinking that whether if we have any other choice, why should we not try that so that I can practice my literature as well as my writing, and my wife can practice as well because I am a surgeon at that time and she is a gynecologist. In the meantime, one big thing happened. That's in 1988. My father died. He died quite in premature age. He was only 64 at that time. After the death of my father, I really had some sort of a helplessness where I don't know. Possibly it was subconscious level and psychological helplessness. Although I'm a known person at that time, I was practicing well. We have our own house, we have our car, we have the house as well. But leaving everything in the early 90s, 93 specifically, we decided to come back to England once. And before that, actually, I've been to England once. At that time, I just only came to take my sort of surgical experience, surgical training, all these things, and exams. So in 1993, once again, we decided that we'll go back because, particularly, the socio-political situation in India, in Bengal at that time, was sort of a punishment for us. Being doctor and being son of Shamush Basu and Gauri Basu, it was very difficult to cope psychologically. So my friends even just came to meet us at that time and said that, have you just gone lost your head that you are going to England, leaving your this big house, this nursing home, this car, everything? We said that okay, let's go, take a chance, and let's see how things go. There will be every option that we can come back. We came here in 1993, didn't go back. And another struggle, almost in the middle age, started at that time. And that is to establish myself at that time. Actually, I am 40, 43 years old. The sons, we have two sons, both the sons started, they are grown up, they are studying in the schools. And I was psychologically to some extent depressed at that time, I should say, even after coming to this country. Because whenever people come from Calcutta or India to England, within a couple of months, their health actually shows that they are improved. But in my case, it exactly happened, exactly the reverse. And that is because of my struggle that I cannot write at that time. A lot of people, particularly those who used to love me, quite famous people even, they thought that this person started writing, but gradually he couldn't cope with it and left literature. But I didn't do that. For 2 3 years, it was a very difficult time to settle in this country slowly and to apply for visa again and have our sort of permanent residence, everything. It took some time, but by that time, you know that even now, although we have a lot of connections and everything, we can talk to people over telephone, but you need to see people, talk to people, go to their place, mix up with different other magazines, and just for this literary career, you need to know the proper person. But whenever out of sight, of course, you really get out of mind as well. Then I decide at one stage that okay, maybe that my stories and novels will not be published. It was published slowly, but not in the same rate. But I decided that even if it is not published, I will have to write my own sort of thing, and then I make a routine sort of thing that I will have to go with these two practices simultaneously, and I sort of make a absolute routine that after coming back from hospital at 5 o'clock, I used to take about 20 minutes late and then taking a mug of coffee. I just used start writing my sort of, well, that has become my sort of magnum opus, I should say, the huge novel I started. I didn't know at that time that who will print this one, who will take this one. Well, anybody whether will take it or not, it might be total wastage or whatever. But I decided that it's my duty that I cannot lead my life without writing, without expressing myself. My own way of expression is to write. So I started writing the huge novel at that time after another 3 4 years of not writing anything. When I finished that one, I thought that I have only completed the first part of that. So when in my holidays I went to Calcutta, I took my this first part of the novel to one of the publishers because they know me. But in the meantime, they thought that I have left literature. I'm not writing anymore. So I gave it to them, and you know there's a huge house. They just used to see people from a top to the lower distance. I say, oh, I say, oh, what happening? I said that I've written this novel and I want to give it to you. All right, okay, keep it there, sort of thing. So I said, okay. After some time, I think they just gave my this novel to be seen by that Sagarmaya Ghosh, who at that time, by the time he retired actually, but possibly gave it to him just to have a quick look and to check the standard. Possibly Sagarmaya Ghosh told the others that keep an eye on this novel and inquire what is he doing really. So they sent me a letter. I still have those letters and everything with me. I told them that on the answer that what I'm doing, I said that I'm writing the second part of this novel, and then I wrote this third part of the novel. So it was a huge one. In this century, possibly still my this novel Chiro Shokha
Sure, sure.
is possibly the largest novel with 5.5 lakhs of words. It was in three parts, but Anandabazar actually they decided that they will publish the whole novel at a stretch and no part or anything, and they will try to publish the whole thing in the single book. That's exactly what he did. After that, the whole thing is a sort of a history.
Yeah.
It's a book of nearly 1,000 pages, but it still sometimes appears as one of the top-selling novel in Bengali literature.
Yeah, I'm sure because I looked up on Amazon and it's there, but I couldn't find the English translation, so maybe I'm going to find that.
That's a big problem actually for all our Bengali literature. I don't think about my literature, but in my father's literature also. To be very frank, considering the number of creations he did, how many are translated? Nothing in that sort.
And I think that's a problem because I think that is something which a lot of us Indians living in India as well as abroad are missing out on. The contemporary literature from our own writers. So I don't know, because I usually thought that maybe Sahitya Academy or one of the government or public sector institutions in India would be undertaking that task, but that doesn't seem to be the case. There definitely needs to be someone doing this, and if not a public service institution, maybe it's high time that Amazon or someone does this. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back in 2 minutes. Thank you very much. So friends, we have with us here today in the studio Dr. Nabakumar Basu, who's a doctor but very well known in Bengal. His novels have been published, serialized in Anand Bazar Patrika, and his bibliography is very impressive. He's written, I think, more than 12 books. I'm not exactly up to date, but from whatever I could see, he's written more than 12 books, and some of them.
Multiplied by 3.
How many?
Nearly 35 to 40 books.
35 to 40. So I could only see what was there on Google, unfortunately.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. So, Dr. Basu, while talking to you, a few thoughts came to my mind. You did talk about your mother and the influence your maternal family had on you as a young writer. Obviously, everyone does end up talking about your father, who is quite well known, but I got the sense that you had a lot more in terms of, as a writer, a lot more impressions to come from your maternal family. Also I noticed that you did write a book on Ma Shada. I think it's Shiromai Ma. So I was just going to ask you a bit about that. What kind of influences you had? What made you write this book?
Actually, I think every writer has got a different type of inclination towards his or her subjects. At one stage, I really felt that life-based novels are actually attracting me very much, and in that, of course, these lives should be quite noted and known lives. And Sharudama, who is the wife of
Yeah.
Ramkrishna Tagore, Ramkrishna Thakur, it attracted me like anything, but not from any sort of religious bias or anything like that. What actually attracted me, I felt this woman is was in absolute poverty since her childhood. There's no education at all. She could hardly in later life could sign her name somehow in Bengali, and that's all. And how could this woman influence the whole nation like that? What was the power inside her? That actually influenced me so much that at one stage I thought that I'll try to inquire about that and I'll try to instigate as well. So at that time, I have already come to this country and I took um, annual leave for a few days and went to India, then went to Joyrambati, his her place, and Kamarhati, where Thakur
Is
stays.
that in Bangladesh now, or is
And
it in India?
vividly, I tried to see and imagine the time when she was a small girl and just roaming around in this field, in this garden, and on the banks of the river. I started to feel all these things slowly and slowly, and then I thought that I found my answer, that she actually had a tremendous power within herself, which should be called the the Bishas, that is the faith, which is faith means it's not something like that somebody is stealing something and people asking that I don't trust you. It's a feeling within herself that actually influenced the whole nation, including a man of tremendous common sense person like Vivekananda as well.
Yeah.
They used to go to mother ultimately, that let us do everything but take the permission from her. And she actually got that power because of leaving things, give it up. It's not very easy thing. It's not very easy thing.
You
We
mean
cannot even just give up the small things, but hard principle of teaching people was that you try whatever you want to do, but don't expect for any of its results. You leave it, you give it up on a superpower, whatever you want to call him or her, you do that, whether God or Allah or Christ or whatever. And then I started following her life. And that's how the novel came as well. Because life based novel is not really the life, but it's my sort of way of representing her. That's what I did. But I didn't distort the life like that. And in that way, actually, I wrote other life based novel as well, like Diana, Princess of
Princess
Wales,
Diana? Yeah.
her life as well, and a few more. My latest and the popular most novel based on the life of Rabindranath Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore's son, which also was serialized in one of the Bengali newspaper. That's A Shumay, which is the Bengali version of Times of India.
Correct.
It was also just serialized there.
So, what made you write about Princess
I
Diana?
really felt that.
Dr. Basu, what made you write about Princess Diana? Was that because you experienced the immense popularity in the United Kingdom, in Britain, or was it something else?
Actually, Diana, Princess of Wales, the first thing is, if I didn't come to this country, I wouldn't have been able to write this novel. because writing novel is actually just getting mingled with the socio-economico, politico things, as well as knowing a lot of things about the monarchy. That wouldn't have been possible if I would have been in India. The second thing which actually attracted me, I found that in her life there were plenty of opportunity to write about, opportunity as well as material to write a novel. And before actually writing this one, when I was collecting my data, once I went to Kolkata and I discussed the whole thing with Sunil Gangopadhyay, another eminent Bengali writer. Then Sunil actually told me that if it is possible, it will be only possible for you because you are in that country. And to be very frank, I really just tried from north to south and east to west of this country. Wherever she went, Diana, Princess of Wales, I write. And then considering her life, the way she was brought up, and she was a typical village sort of girl initially. After that, got in touch with the monarchy, how she found difficult to cope with it. But even then, she had a very open mind, broadness of mind as well. And then how she was cheated, I should say that, from the family as well. All these things gradually came and came, and obviously, of course, after all these things, the sad death. And I found somehow, I don't know, uh, I should say the truth, that in India, this book didn't go very well. I thought that there will be quite a number of publications, number of editions will be there, but somehow it was not there. It was published by the Patra Bharati, which is another big publication, I think. But this book was not that much taken by the Bengali readers. And about Diana, Princess of Wales, there are plenty of books in different other languages as well.
Yeah.
But there is no novel. This is the only one novel. And I believe that at one stage, this novel will be translated into English. And actually, this will be cared of by the English people, not the people of our country initially.
Yeah.
But it has not been translated yet. And I really don't have time. And I don't have that much of my English knowledge, to be very frank, to write the things. I can somehow communicate more or less, but it's not possible for me to just write the whole thing in English or to translate the things. But I think that it will be translated at one time, and this book possibly will take its own course.
Definitely. So I'm sure someday it will get translated. And I wish that you are able to present a copy to Prince Harry or someone from Diana's family.
At once, actually, I thought that.
Yeah.
I thought that once I'll just do that. But the thing is this, like my friends and in the hospital, but the other staff, everybody used to see this book. Oh my God, this is a book written by Dr. Basu. How do you know this is written by Dr. Basu? Because in the back cover and in the blurb, there is my photo and everything. They can only read that much and see my photo, but they can see the material of this one. But they are very keen to read that this is a novel. There is no novel about her. And she is still popular. The television program still goes on quite often.
Yeah, I believe, yes. I mean, The Crown, which is a series on Netflix, has broken all records and is very popular even in India. So definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Dr. Vasu, that raises a very pertinent question because you have produced such great work, but equally what is distressing me and what actually is a sad story of our time is that because you've been writing in Bengali, somehow the crossover, like for instance, I would have thought about seeing your books in British bookstores, in Waterstones or one of those stores. That have been ideal. I should have been able to go and pick up a copy if I wanted to read any of your work, but that doesn't seem to be the reality. And
question which... Not the reality in this country.
Yeah. So is it because like writing in Bengali has restricted you in some way? If you were, let's say, a writer in English, you would have gone to maybe a global acclaim much more easily, or you would have found readers across the globe. And that's not a good thing, because we do read French writers or German writers who
Oh
easily
yeah,
get
that's
translated.
always possible. Yes, yes, that's always possible. That so many Bengali writers that they write in Bengali, and I actually just answered about this question number of times in different interviews. I told them, and some of them actually just inquired me that, Dr. Basu, why don't you take some initiative so that your works get translated into English as well? But that was not possible for me because, as I told you initially, that I'm a bi-professional man. Now, just since last few years, I have taken retirement from the hospital.
Okay.
I don't do my medicine practice anymore. In fact, not medicine. I'm a surgeon. In fact,
That's very
so
qualified. Yeah.
to maintain the surgical career along with literary career, it was so difficult that I couldn't take any initiative. But definitely, if I would have that much knowledge of writing in English, I hope that my books would have been much more popular. But the thing is this, I always said that the language in which I cannot dream, I cannot produce my literary works
Yeah.
with that. It's better felt than expressed. That how can somebody dream with the language? But actually we do. Actually we do. If we think about our dreams at night, what we remember in the morning, if we think carefully that we have seen that dreams in our own language, the language actually just remain inside our soul like that. At one stage, to be very frank, I also thought about my medical problems as well. You see, although I'm a surgeon, but I had to face different things as a doctor. Like when COVID came,
Yeah.
I used to think about a lot of things, and at that time also my literary mind worked as well. Like I can give you an example that this year I have written one novel for one of the puja numbers in Calcutta.
Calcutta. Yeah.
It's called Navakollul. In Navakollul magazine, I have written one novel. The basic thing I can tell you this much, that this is a novel which actually compares that two huge pandemic with a gap of 200 years. What happened 200 years ago, when even at that time, although the vaccine was invented by Michael Jenner at that time in 1796, and this pandemic now, COVID, this is actually some sort of realization of these two pandemic in the old and the present the sort of scenario. That is my novel, I can say that. And the area I selected is North Bengal in India, and in that sort of way, it's a different type of novel. But it came in my mind that as a doctor, if I'm only a writer, I possibly couldn't have written this novel. I hope that this will be a different type of novel this time in one of the Calcutta magazines.
Sure. So there's going to be a medical fiction, one of its kind, I guess, once it gets done. So we very much look forward to that. Dr. Basu, we talked about Princess Diana in your book on that, and that I wanted to ask you. I mean, right now, what happened with the UEFA World Cup? There is this whole issue about racism in Britain, and you, as a writer, what is your view? Do you think racism exists, or is it overblown, or we have in your time here, has it come down? What is your thought on that?
To be very frank, that type of racism, what we have experienced in our own country, in comparison to that, although I'm living in this country nearly 30 years, I haven't seen that, to be very frank. We always hear about different things, and I have read in the Bengali literature as well, written by noted writers sometime, those who came to this country for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks holidays, and returning back to India, they have written the huge novels, big novels, but actually the reality was very less in those in those novels, and I must say that what the experience of racism in our country, I thought, is possibly much more than what we see in this country. Since last 30 years, my both boys are just brought up in this country mostly from their childhood. They also say that, Daddy, we talk about racism more than the people of this country. When we used to go in our childhood from Bengal to Bihar to Orissa to Uttar Pradesh to different other places, we have seen racism at that time. In Bengal as well, we used to call people like these, those who are coming as the plumbers, we used to call them the Orisha people. So in that way, racism was too much in our society. But in comparison to that, there is existence of racism, of course, in this country as well. What particularly we see in the television sometime. And last year, I have written a short story about this one, which also I expected that should have been translated into English. That's based on this racism and color biasness. But as you asked me, the straight answer is this: racism in this country is much less in comparison to our country.
Dr. Basu, that's very honest and very well said. And I think that echoes with my own experiences, how people from different regions in India are treated. So sadly, what you're saying is actually true. We actually have seen racism coming down here, but in India, still biases of all kinds prevail. There's a caller on.
That's right.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yes,
hi.
I can hear you.
Hi. A question to Dr. Basu.
Please.
Professionally, Dr. Basu, you are a surgeon. Yes?
Yeah.
Am I right? Now, what inspired you to become a well-known writer? Is it because you choose to become a writer, or because you were influenced by someone to become a writer, especially in Bengali writer as well? Because you are now living in London, you could write in English maybe.
No, I don't write in English. I write in Bengali, which is my mother tongue. And to answer your question briefly, that I have not been influenced by anybody else, although my father was a very, very famous Bengali writer. But as I initially explained, that I personally believe that there is no genetic connection of literary practice really. It is very spontaneous. Maybe that the environment helped me a little bit, as I saw my father writing in a very difficult situation, in a very hot sort of the weather. But somebody who is going to write or all these things of art practice, I think that these are absolutely individual sort of realization. That's how they started. There is no genetic connection with it.
So, Dr. Basu, we are coming towards the end of the show. I have a long list of questions, but I'll just try and ask the ones which are most pertinent for now. You've written so much. Is any of your book now being made into a movie? And, today we live in the age of OTT. Is there something which we can expect to be seen on Netflix or any other platform? Is there any conversation like that happening?
I'm not very sure actually. As I told you, that all these things require connection to different other people, which is very much lacking from my side.
Okay.
Whatever the connection and communications, they are being done through telephone, by WhatsApp, or things like that. But recently, just a couple of months ago, I've just heard from one of the big film house that they want to serialize my novel Chiroshaka. but how they will do it and when they will start it has not been finalized. And everything you cannot, that you cannot discuss over telephone really.
Yes.
We need to sit in the chair and then discuss with you. And they're very comfortable like we're talking now in this type of show.
Yeah.
But they think that I must sit with them because this is a big thing. It's a huge novel. They want to serialize it. Maybe that it will, with the popular term as it is called, the mega serials, and it might be continued for 3-4 years. So they just want to do these things sitting side by side and discussing about these things, and they want to just share my ideas of how it could be done, the locations, the artists, and so many things. And obviously I also feel that definitely I can give them ideas about that. And few other my stories have been made into short films, and some of them are still being done. Sometimes they're coming in the drama form. People are doing the Shruti Natoks, as they call it, Path Natok. That's also being done. This is going on, but the amount of my stories and travelogues and novels, considering that it has not been put into films in that way, really, it should have been more. Maybe that once it will be done.
So I'm pretty sure people who are watching it would come forward because you have a treasure trove. You have a treasure here. Remarkable work. And one of the things which I always feel is the quality of content coming out of India in its TV serials, on its OTT platforms is still quite poor. It's not really backed by the kind of literary work which we have seen, that like Dr. Basu's work and his father's work. Those things are still not being touched upon. Those are stories which I hope in the coming days through OTT platforms and through different genres comes out.
Definitely there is opportunity, and to be very frank, I have seen that one of the Bengali serials was going on at one stage, and there is no objection in telling you that it was based on the life of Sharada Ma, Ramakrishna's wife, and lot of things actually I have seen which have been taken from my novel, but I have not been contacted or I have not been informed about these things at all. And these things actually happen in our Bengali literature. So I can't help it really, because I'm a resident in this country. And now because of COVID, since last nearly couple of years, just can't go, stuck here.
I'm sure they could have acknowledged it, or they could have at least written to you, but unfortunately, in India, we still, get away with such things. It's unfortunate, but it happens all the time. So, friends, we had Dr. Basu with us here today. It was, the time was very short. I don't know. It feels like we've been speaking only for 20 minutes, but it seems like we have covered 1 hour. It was such a pleasure to speak to you, sir. And I hope to do this interview once more, maybe another time, and talk about some more of your work. I would be trying to get some English translations. I hope I'm able to get it. And next time I'm speaking to you, I hope to be able to discuss one of your work with you. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being on my show. It's such an honor. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much. It's an honor for me.